Hello in TV land. Welcome everybody to Mocktails from the Cantina. Live, we are live tonight. Live show number 61 and no intro because there is no time. But what I do have time for is I have time to talk with some really good friends of mine all about collecting. Yes, we are going to talk for the first time 61 live episodes, and we are going to do our very, very first collectors episode. I'm going to bring back some people that were on the show last time, so we have some continuity going as well, which is good for a change. But actually, you know what? Let's do a cheer and a beer with Brother Rich Brendel. This is something that has been continuous for a while now. Brother and producer, Rich Brendel. Rich, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
I am glad that you did not tell me that you couldn't hear me because I was on mute.
Yeah.
That would have sucked. I just kind of ran. It's a run and gun kind of episode tonight. But I'm glad to have you guys on the show, as we are going to share a lot of really cool things tonight and talk about a lot of cool stories related to collecting.
Yeah.
And you can definitely chime in on the professional side, the psychological side of this madness that sometimes gets the best of us. I know it gets the best of me. But anyways, man, I'm looking forward to the show tonight. What are you drinking to this evening, and what are you drinking, Brother Rich?
I am drinking a dive beer. It's from Lakefront Brewery. It's a Milwaukee lager. And I am cheering to opening of all toys. Don't
Opening
keep them
all
in
toys.
boxes. Let those puppies breathe.
Hey, I like that. As some of us are openers around here, you know?
Yeah. It's the only way to do it.
Cheers to opening toys, man. Cheers to that. I would like to look at that. You still got that talent. You're never gonna get rid of that talent, man. But it's not out of the baseball bat. You got to bring the baseball bat back on.
Yeah, I should have. I have it another room right now. So
that's okay, because one thing that I learned, I'm going to be sharing something tonight that I shared on the very, very first live episode. And one of the things that I had learned on that first live episode is don't walk away from the camera when it's live. So we don't want you to go chase that plastic beer bat down. But without further ado, I am going to bring on all my friends at once. Brother Sean Hines, who is not a stranger to the show, producer Cody Moore, and producer Matthew Rooney. The five of us here are going to talk about collecting.
It's about to go down.
It's about to go down. Yes, Sean, you are ready. I know you're ready.
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about. Let's try to do this, I guess, in chronological order, at least for starters. Sean, why don't we start with you? I know you're a little older than me, but we're considered from the same generation.
Don't put me in the retirement home just quite yet, my man.
No, I'm not there either. I'm not there. I want to kind of talk about the collecting element, because I don't think I was necessarily collecting all the action figures like I was now. But on the back of the card, it said collect all 54 or 72. You know, when did the collecting bug truly start for you?
I mean, as soon as there was stuff that was available. Now, I did not, I was not privy to the early bird kit. My parents weren't that keen on knowing that was even a thing. So, yeah, obviously, it wasn't until the stuff actually started to get released officially in stores beyond the early bird kit is when my collection actually started. Well, technically, my first piece of collecting would have been the Tim and the Hildebrand poster that everybody knows, of Luke and Leia in that famous pose there, that I've been taking around with me, getting signed by everybody. I've shown it on this show before, I believe. The poster is obviously beat to hell, but it's got so many signatures on it. And I remember, I think it was Bruce Boa who commented, regardless of the way the condition of the poster was, this with all these signatures and the condition of this poster, he called this is living history right here. Just this is living and breathing history. I'm like, you can't get any better description than that. Of course, that's from Empire Strikes Back. But one of the key things.
Who on that poster that you have? What's the ratio from people deceased to people still living?
Oh, geez.
Producer Andy from Miami chimes in. Hello, Andy. Chuck.
Chuck, Andy there. The ratio is obviously starting to tilt in a different scale as far as still with the folks that are still with us. I mean, there's folks on there like Phil Brown, Uncle Owen, and obviously Peter Mayhew and Carrie Fisher and Kenny Baker, David Prowse. There's just there's the list. It's a pretty full poster. Obviously, I even got George Lucas on there. He's still with us, thank God. And the only major one missing is Harrison Ford. And I'm hoping maybe one day he'll decide to come visit us and actually want to talk and sign some things at a celebration or something here in Chicago at some point in my life before we lose him. But we'll see. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I will not buy anything where I don't get to actually meet the gentleman in person. That's just not the way I do autographs. I have to meet the person. That's what makes it special for me.
But you weren't, when you got the poster and you got the action figures, you weren't considered a collector like you are now.
Well, no, I was just a kid playing with my toys like anybody else was back in 1978.
What year would you say did you truly say, like, hey, shit, I'm a collector?
Oh, geez. I don't think I really consider myself a collector. I just had the stuff growing up playing with it. You know what I mean? You're not a collector. You're just a kid that wants all the toys. I remember going through like this.
Now. You're a collector.
Yeah, I'm a collector now. Obviously, when that term came into my personality trait, I don't know. But all I know is every Christmas I was going through that Sears wish book, tearing out the page and taking it to see Santa Claus at the mall, saying I want everything on this page. Simple as that.
That's a tall order, man. It's a tall order.
It was a tall order, but you know what? I wasn't shy about asking about what I wanted. One of the things I always thought was kind of funny. My mom, for a short period of time, worked at, for those of us in the area that may remember this store, it was called Zare. Do you remember Zare?
Yeah, Zare is kind of one of those things that's spoken about. I was actually listening to Ozzy's Boneyard on XM, and the DJ was going, yeah,
Zare was always
Molly Crew record at Zare.
Zare was always kind of like a Kmart wannabe back in the day. And I remember my mom came home one day and she had this bag that she put on the couch, and I could see through the bag that she had bought me a Star Wars figure. And this was that figure that she bought me.
Here, look at that. Jumping a gun.
Yeah. This is what she came home with. I saw it through the bag. She said I wasn't supposed to see it right away, but I saw it anyway, and she just decided to give it to me. But this was one of my earliest. Yeah, and it was quickly followed up by this guy right here. Yeah, the scoundrel that I need to get to sign on my poster. I can get there we go. The big head time. It wasn't until years later that I actually figured out there was actually the small head. I didn't even know that I had the big head for so many years, not even knowing.
So are those your originals?
Those are my originals. Yes.
Those are your originals. We're gonna. You got two things out of the way. You showed me your first thing that you got, or one of the first things. What was your first figure? Was that it?
Actually, my first figure was actually Greedo.
You've shared that on the show before too. I think your grandparents.
Yes, Greedo. Correct.
See,
yes,
now
it was.
Trying to steal. I remembered your grandparents got that. I get 2 points for that.
Yes. Score. Good for you. All right. I'll drink to that. Yeah.
Okay, so we got Han, Luke. We got things from your childhood. We got a little bit of history there. Cody, how about you? I know you're not as old as us two old school guys. So let's stick to Star Wars, unless there is something else that you started collecting before you got into that beautiful collection behind you. Was there something else that you got hooked on, or was it Star Wars from the beginning?
I mean, from the beginning, it was Jurassic Park. That's probably the first thing that I started trying to collect, a big amount of that I had actually seen advertised and saw in commercials. And it was kind of like, oh, I want to get that one eventually. But that's the only stuff that I still have, like from childhood. I did have a lot of Star Wars, Power of the Force 2 like series toys as a kid, but then I kind of, as I went into the army for almost 6 years, and then came back home in 2016. And the only thing I still have left from childhood toy wise are my Jurassic Park toys, the original ones. But about
you have all
20,
you have all your Jurassic Park toys still.
yeah, my ones from
Are
childhood.
they on? Do you have them on display, or
They're not put on display yet, but I plan to get them on display eventually.
okay? Because I have a Muppet collection and a Simpsons collection, and they've never made it. The Muppets made it on display, but they have not been on display in a long time. But they're back in the crawl space. Something I don't want to sell, but something that should be on display that unfortunately isn't.
That's exactly how my Jurassic Park toys are sitting right now. Since the move to this spot, they're just sitting kind of in packaging still, kind of put away.
Were they on display at the old place?
Right there at the end, I got them on display, but not very well. I've got a lot of like kind of recollected a lot of those toys in packaging, so I've got those on display. But
Sean,
I don't have the loose versions.
I want to bounce back to you, Sean. We're going to bounce a little bit all over the place. See, there goes we got to keep the continuity by going all over the place. Sean, do you collect other things except for Star Wars? Do you have another collection of something?
Is this that's kind of a big question. Where do I begin, and how long are we going tonight? Well, as long as we're gonna go that way, I'm gonna throw one more useless fact for your listeners, watchers out there. Back to Zare real quick. For those who don't know, we would not have TJ Maxx if it was not for Zare. Zare created TJ Maxx to compete with Marshalls back in the day before they went out of business. But after they went out of business, they were still the owners of TJ Maxx. Anyway, moving on. So yes, of course, I just wanted to put that nugget in your brain and see if anybody remembers it after the show. Of course, the other side of before Star Wars, it was all about the superheroes. The DC and the Marvel. Back then, I didn't even know DC and Marvel. Yes, the Migos. And I didn't even know DC and Marvel were two separate things because Migo would sell them as world's best superheroes on the box, and you'd have Spider-Man and Batman on the same packaging in the same lineup. So to me, there was no separation of Marvel and DC. So there was always the superheroes. And then, of course, as you get older and toy lines grow out of favor, you went from superheroes to Star Wars to Transformers, G.I. Joe, and then wrestling, and I think it sort of dropped off after that, and then came full circle right back to Star Wars.
Yeah, I can relate to that, right? It snowballed in other things, but then it's like, well, I got to be focused. And I only have so much, and everybody's only got so much space. We'll talk about time, space, and money. As Steven Sansweet kind of introduced to me several years ago, that those are the friends and foes of collecting. Maybe more the enemies of collecting. Cody, do you have something that you want to share tonight. I feel like we should have did the paper bag, and we should have like described what we had like when we were in kindergarten. I shared the Luke X-wing pilot for show and tell, but we'll do that on another episode. We're just gonna go out and show it like Sean did.
I did that. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I did grab one of the first items that because I didn't have much of a Star Wars collection when I got back from the army, but then 2016 I kind of started collecting again and recollecting some of the old figures I did have in the past, and this is one of the first Funko Pops that I got that got me into Funkos, and then now collecting autographed versions of them, or at least taking them and getting them autographed. Darth Maul being one of my favorites, I had to get it, and then that led to the Funko addiction.
So Darth Maul popped your Funko cherry, huh?
Yep. This one specifically.
That one was your first Funko. How many Funkos do you have now?
I don't know.
You lost count. I wonder if it's funny. Brother and show producer Brian Klein, he has a huge Funko collection. I don't know anybody that has a bigger collection than him. Ian Savage, Chuck, thanks for tuning in. Another Patreon supporter watching tonight. Brother Brian Klein, man, I think he's got a spreadsheet on his Funko collection. Now, Matthew, I know you're not a collector. You've told me you're not a big collector, but I know you've shared some things on Inside the Wampa Cave, which is a collecting segment of this program that you guys get access to supporting the show via Patreon. Matthew, why are you not a collector? I should say. Let's start with that.
I mean, I collect things. I don't collect Star Wars toys. But like I have Star Wars novels and Star Wars comic books, and when you asked for show and when you asked for show and tell, I asked earlier, does it have to be Star Wars? And you said no, it could be anything. So I have like retro video game stuff that I collect. I have like anime figurines. So I have stuff, but I just never did Star Wars toys because I think I was born a little later in the early 80s and they weren't a thing when I was a kid, and I just never got into them. I think they're kind of cool, but it just wasn't what I had as a kid, and so I don't have any kind of attachment to it at all. I don't think they look that great, but it's just because it wasn't part of my childhood like you guys.
And why start now with the action figures?
Yeah, well, like I like anime figures, but it's a very different thing. They're they're not posable and they're a little more expensive because they're sculpted statues and things like that. So I buy like one or two a year, but I do like those, but they're not toys really. They're statues.
Well, I respect the fact that you're focused because I think focusing, Sean, I think for you too, I feel like focusing is a very hard thing when it comes to collecting because there's so much cool shit out there.
Well, it's easy when you're broke and you move a lot.
Sort of makes the decision for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, if I had money, I'd probably have a lot more things, but I just don't have it. I have, I'm a single parent, so I only have a little bit of extra money to play with every once in a while, so I have to do it effectively.
So what
that's probably part of my. I was going to say that's probably part of my problem. I'm a childless heathen, so I have.
You asked for like an item and then like an early item. So which one do you want now?
You know what? Let me see the early item.
Okay, so this isn't from exactly when I was a kid. It's an NES game. It's the original Zelda game. I had these as a kid. Our house was burgled when I was like 9 years old, and they took all my Nintendo games and my consoles. I had a Super Nintendo and a Nintendo, but I did find this like as a teenager. I started to find them again, and so I still have this. So I have this one that I found back then. This would have been in the 90s, and so it's got the original cartridge. It's got all the stuff that goes with it. And in fact, it's got two different manuals in this one that I found, and it's got like all the little things. But the really cool thing about this is that it comes with a map. So I have two different maps here. There's like a fold-out map of the whole thing, and it has blank squares in it that you're supposed to fill in yourself, like if they didn't want to give away the whole game. So one of the maps I left blank, and then the other one is filled in with marker. So it's all there.
You know, the first thing that comes to mind when you show me that is Christmas of 1987 and how many hours I sank in playing that game. So many.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Zelda's very nostalgic for me because, I mean, Nintendo was one of those things. And I sold my Nintendo collection. And I used to write into the fan club letters, and there was a lot of that stuff printed in there.
Yeah.
And,
well, if you see behind me, if you focus me again, I've got right here, I have my CRT, you know, my tube television, and I have a Nintendo and a Super, and there's also a Wii there, and I have the Wii all it's all dissected to where I can, you know, do all kinds of stuff with it. And so like I like to play these older games, and I've got all kinds of controllers and stuff, and I play them on the tube television. And I even do like I do a lot of the Pokemon games, and you can trade between the systems. And so I've got like 2 or 3 different of each, you know, Game Boy Advance and DS, and so that way I can play all the games and I can swap the Pokemon between them, and it's kind of fun.
You know, brother Brad Riverdale and brother Barry Harmon, they have a very, very nice vintage, specifically Sega game collection. But I think we've talked about this several episodes ago. I was more Nintendo than
I was
Sega.
too. Like now I think Sega's cool, but back then I didn't have Sega. Like my parents bought me Nintendo, and so that was all I did was Nintendo until, you know, the newer consoles. But now I do like the older Sega stuff, and I like to get into it. Although I don't have any of the older Sega consoles right now.
And before I throw it to brother Rich Brendel, I do want to ask you something, because this will be like a nice segue in from the say the word for me.
Archival.
Archaeological
element to collecting, because brother Rich Brendel is going to talk about the I guess the philosophical, the sociology side of it. But you know, you got me this book, and I'll be honest with you, man. I have not taken a deep dive into this book, but the title just says it all. So much stuff, how humans discovered tools, invented meaning, and made more of everything. This definitely, especially with ephemera, you know, like flyers and you know, just weird store displays and that sort of thing. Why do you think it's important, Matthew, that people do collect from your standpoint?
Well, I mean, I think, and maybe Rich could speak to this aspect of it more, but I think on a personal basis, you know, we have memories of the past, and having, you know, items takes us back there, like whether it's archaeological artifacts or personal items, like that item, you know, like you asked earlier to Sean, is that original? Like that came from when you were a kid. So like that item was there. It has a history. You know, he played with it as a child. And so it has like some kind of a magical character to it that it's imbued with. And so it's like more special that it's his from when he was a child than if he had bought it from eBay last week and didn't have a history with it. So there's that personal attachment to things. But then also I think from like an anthropological point of view, which archaeology is a subfield of anthropology, there's the whole like collector like subgroup of people. It's almost like sort of like a sub society where there's sort of, you know, things that each person does, like anthropologists historically would go out and study different cultures, and collectors are sort of like a subculture, because and especially toy collectors, because there's like different you know, toys from different eras, and like you're sort of inducted into the group if you have certain kinds of toys or things, and people will swap stories like we're doing right now about like the first time they got into it, and like what's, you know, their favorite item, and like what's the, you know, specific item that like makes the collection special. So from an anthropological point of view, and I'm sure there have been anthropologists who've studied, people who are collectors as a subculture, because I think, like, when I hang out with all of you guys, that's what I find interesting from my perspective as an anthropologist, is I kind of like to sit back and watch you all and observe you and kind of figure out, well, why are they so into it, and like what makes them a collector, and like what are the key sort of things about it.
I think you bring a good point, because when I asked Sean if those were original, I have those, and they're not original. They're not mine from when I was a kid, and I'm going to share in a little bit with the only thing I have left from my childhood. I don't know what happened to all my Star Wars shit. I have no idea. God only knows. But when Sean's holding those, I'm like, oh my God, are those original? It's like I'm seeing them for the first time, because I've been friends with Sean for so long, and I've gotten to know his childhood stories, and seeing those videos that we used in The Force Within Us. And, it's definitely a lot more powerful, than, let's say I bought a mint C9 that's in the acrylic case that was graded by AFA. It's
Well,
a whole.
Yeah, Matthew's absolutely right. It has a lot to do with that connection. My historic DNA is on those figures. You know what I mean? As far as the history of me is concerned, not don't get your mind out of the gutter. Don't think anything else. Now, and then Matt, you might appreciate this. Back in the late '80s, I was working at Toys R Us in the video game department section, where I had when they used to have those that aisle was just the cards of all the games, and you had to take the ticket. I was the guy that worked in the little security window that you took the ticket to and got the game from. And I remember seeing that package was really cool, because I remember just organizing the entire wall in the storeroom of all that stuff. And I think about it now, and I think about how much those things go for. I'm like, God, man, I should have had a stash of those.
Oh yeah, like yeah. Sometimes the boxes, and I'm sure it's the same with Star Wars toys too. Like the boxes and the booklets can be just as expensive, if not more, than the actual game cartridges.
Hey, go back to the action figures. So I kind of have a little bit of a, it was a little bit of a hiccup, I guess, because when I started collecting in high school, asking people if they had Star Wars figures, 92, I got a lot of these figures, the whole set. And what happened was I kind of put them all together over the years, and I picked the most mint one. Like, I don't even know which ones I have that are from when I first started collecting versus the ones that I had gotten, recent years. Sometimes I wish, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have known the ones that I gotten from high school friends. They were probably beat, but now they have stories, because a lot of my friends have passed on. It would have been kind of cool to say, oh yeah, this was my friend Dan's figure, and he passed away, and this was from his childhood. But I wasn't that organized about it. Now, I did have a Star Wars garage sale, the first of many, last week, and I had this history professor over here, and he made a brilliant fucking point. He said, things are very, very, very expensive right now. He said, fast forward 30 years from now. Is Tyler's children, if he has children, I'm using this as an example, are they going to drop $1.5 million on a rocket-firing Boba Fett? When our generation is already passed on, what happens to the value of this vintage stuff way down the line? Is it going to completely drop? Is it going to decrease a little? Is it hard to say? Because we won't be attached to these things from our generation that have went up in price tenfold. It doesn't make sense for, like, my daughter, she's 10. Her kids aren't going to give a shit about a rocket-firing Boba Fett. Let's be honest. Nobody's going to pay what people are paying now, because the nostalgia is going to be completely gone. And I think that's a lot of what is driving the price up and the creativity side of it up as well. You know, do you have any thoughts on that, Matthew? Before I spin it to Rich.
I mean, it's hard to predict. I mean, yeah, it does make sense that once like the generation who is nostalgic for it isn't around anymore, that might drop off. But you just never know how things will, because like there might be more interest in it later. You know, like, and it also depends on the course of Star Wars now, which I don't think we want to get into on this, you know, discussion.
Yeah,
but you know,
another episode.
like as you know, as the property moves forward and maybe increases and decreases in popularity in different points in time, then people will want to get that older stuff. And I mean, maybe the price will go down, but I don't really know. It's hard to say. It's hard to predict the future in that way.
Yeah, you know,
what's the going rate?
Oh, we lost him. I told him to charge his phone. All right, we'll bring him back. I did not remove him. He removed himself. Rich, do you have any thoughts on why people collect?
Yeah, I think that at the core, it's part of our childhood. I think that's a big part of it. A lot of people that I work with people that are neurodivergent, like autism and ADHD, stuff like that. Like people that are high functioning but got their struggles. And one thing among a lot of them that I resonate with also is how much we identify with the characters. And I think that's a major part of collecting. Because when we own like a miniature version of that character, it becomes that much more real to us. We know it's fiction, but it helps us to identify with the characters more, thus helps us to really enjoy the whatever franchise it is that much more.
Well, now, why do you think specifically Star Wars? There's a lot of different kind of franchises. Like, I don't know anybody that has a, you know, do you guys know anybody that has a superhero collection that's equivalent to, say, Steven Sansweet's Star Wars collection?
There's a guy in Indiana. He has a museum he calls the Hall of Heroes. He used to have it in his garage in his house that he remodeled to look like the Hall of Justice. And he used to have visitors come to his house and go to this garage, and he was featured on a couple of specials. Now he's got his own big store museum kind of a thing, and he now hosts his own Comic-Con in his area of Indiana. So, and it's a huge collection.
I've been to it once, the Comic-Con there.
I think a major part of what makes Star Wars collecting better and what makes Star Wars better than like even superheroes is it's more of an attainable hero's journey. Luke Skywalker started out as a farm boy. And, you know, so he started with a pretty ordinary life. So that goes very well with our identifying with these characters. I mean, like Superman and stuff like that, none of us are aliens, you know. Batman, most of us aren't that rich, you know. We identify with
we can't
Luke.
relate to them. We're looking for those people in our lives. We can't relate to them.
If I had Batman money, you know, people would be asking, where does he get those wonderful toys?
But I also think part of it, as I can't speak to like superhero stuff because I don't know much about it, but I think Star Wars, it's also the historical circumstance where it was there for, you know, a few years, like in the late 70s and early 80s, and then it went away for a few years and there wasn't as much stuff. And then the generation that grew up with it as kids, they got older and they got some money. And so then in the 90s, they kind of brought it back and it had a resurgence. And so it just sort of had this perfect storm of a situation where the people that grew up with it got it when it came back, and then the older stuff, of course, which was only produced for a short while, then becomes more valuable. Whereas like superhero stuff or some of the other properties, maybe they didn't have that sort of lapse in time where it like created this like bubble of things in the past for people to look for and try to reestablish in their lives.
Plus, Star Wars changed the game. Sorry, Chris. Star Wars changed the game when it came to movie tie-in toys. Back then, toys based on movie properties or TV properties, they just did not sell, and so that's why he was able to get 100% of the profits from the toys, because nobody believed that he could make any money out of them. And it changed the game when it came back.
Yeah, not only did it change the game, they've always owned the game. Well, not always, because I do know mid 80s when they stopped making Star Wars toys. All those Power of the Force figures, they only made that line run so long. And, He-Man and G.I. Joe and Transformers, which are still relatively highly collectible. I know there's people that have collections of those. The funniest thing, I mentioned I have a small Muppet collection. I don't know I'm not really part of the Muppet community, so I don't know how many Muppet collectors are out there. I know there's a couple, but on the level of how many Star Wars collectors there are, the Muppet collectors are very, very few and far between. But there was this Muppet Fest that happened in LA in 2001, and there were 2 dealers. And I didn't go, but Duffy gave me the full report on the experience. He said the dealers ran out of all their merch in like the first 2 hours.
Oh, shit.
That would be a Star Wars dealer's dream right there. Ran out of toys. I don't have anything else to sell. Crazy. Rich, what do you have to share with us this evening?
Do you want the first toy thingy?
Yeah, let's do the first. Yeah, we're talking retro.
This isn't my first toy, but it is one of my most memorable, and it's probably the oldest thing that I have. And that's this guy right here.
Yub. Look at that.
He looks just like you.
What's it? Give us the backstory on this.
So when I was a kid, I had a different teddy bear, and the music box on it, because it played Rockabye Baby, and the music box on it went out. And my mom told me I was kind of pissed about this guy, actually, because my mom told me that she would get me an Ewok one now, and it would play Yub Nub. He never played Yub Nub. And so, my mom lied to me, and I was so mad about that. But
what year is that from? I don't think I've ever even seen that before.
It's a vintage. It was.
I've seen it.
Came out, so it was like 83.
Wow, that is crazy. I mean,
yeah.
It was beat.
And then they had Celebration. I think it was Celebration 5 or 6. They did replicas of them, and I got all of those.
Does he still have his tag?
Yeah. He's got a little tag in the back.
Is it a Kenner tag? Do you know?
Dude, it's so faded. There's nothing on there now.
That is great, man. That is great.
Yeah.
It's got nothing printed on it anymore, so basically, it just looks like he's got a piece of toilet paper stuck to him.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to share something kind of sad. I'm going to go old school. I do have 2 things from my childhood. I only have access to one because I truly don't know where the other one is. It's probably.
Are you going to come back to the other ones eventually? Like the other ones that we bought? Okay.
We'll go around the horn on the more modern thing here after I share this one. So the only thing that I have now, this is definitely not the first. This was probably one of the last Star Wars things that I had gotten as a kid, which is kind of cool. This, and you know what? I'm going to soil these clean sheets that Michelle worked so hard at folding. But it was Christmas of maybe 84, I want to say. And it was like the gift that Santa forgot to leave under the tree. So the doorbell rang, And I was like, what is it? And my mom's like, oh, I think Santa left you something. And it was these sheets.
Oh, sweet.
And this is a fitted sheet, and it's got a top sheet. And I had these on my bed when I was actually in high school, when I rediscovered Star Wars. And at the time, these were probably only, 8 years old, which to me as a teenager seemed like a lifetime ago. But it's got all the... It's got all... you know what? I probably had sex on these sheets.
So your DNA is on them.
So you have the literal DNA on those. Okay.
And I do like these because this has got all the images from the complete trilogy. And that was kind of my little bit of a complaint on the Attack of the Clones stuff. Came out with some really cool things. But then after Sith came out, you're looking at it and it's like, well, it's missing something. So there was like my complete trilogy on my betting there. Okay, let's go around the horn and let's share some things that either they're modern or they're just so fucking cool that you're like, I want to share this tonight on Mocktails from the Cantina Live. Sean, we'll start with you. I'm hoping you got that disco ball, man.
Well, yeah, you kind of, spoilers, man. What the hell? Okay, we'll start there if you want to start there. That's fine. Okay, so there was a company that got bought out by GameStop. I'm trying to remember what it was called now. But ThinkGeek, thank you very much. Yes, they had an incredible website filled with incredible merchandise, and GameStop bought them out and then killed them. But they had this disco ball that I had been searching for forever. I remember seeing it on their website and thinking, I got to get me that just because it was just too freaking cool to pass up. And I waited too long. They went out of business. The website went out. Every now and then you do the eBay search, nothing, nada, never once did it ever come up. Then this past summer at the Star Wars Day in Joliet, Illinois, I got there super early. They got into the vendor room before it was technically officially open, and this guy had it, and I couldn't believe my jaw hit the floor. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't get to it fast enough. And then I was like debating it because I'm like, oh, the price is kind of a little more than I want to pay. And then there's a guy behind me goes, well, if you're not going to get it, I'm going to get it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm getting it then. So, but here it is in all its glory. Look at this bad boy. I mean, come on. How could you not want a Death Star disco ball?
Cool. Now,
seriously.
Can I ask you how much you paid for that?
Sure, you can ask.
Are you telling, or your wife's watching the show?
She was with me when I got it. I think I paid $80 for it. So she actually was the one that was, it's kind of funny. She's usually the one trying to hold me back, but she knew how much I was looking for this thing, and she was looking at me like, you're gonna regret it. You're gonna be kicking yourself in it if you don't get it now. She's like, just get it. Just get it. You know
what's funny? But I am like that with the vintage glitter Star Wars iron-ons. Like, that is what I'm constantly looking for, and I can't even find. They're very, very hard. I've been looking over the last fucking 25 years for these things. You gotta pull the trigger when you find it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And this is what I was going to show you before the disco ball, if I may.
Yes.
When as a Star Wars fan growing up, one of the dreams you always have is, oh man, I wish I could be in Star Wars. How cool would it be to be in Star Wars? Well, I think it was Celebration 5. The Disney booth had this thing they were calling it D-Tech or D-Tech Me. Okay. Oh, yeah. And they would scan you and then turn you into, a Star Wars thing. What they were doing at the time, now if I can get this out of here, it was the carbon freeze me. So basically what this is, you can see if I can get close. That's me. There we go. That's me in carbonite. It's basically, there we go.
I do have one of those.
Did you get one too? These are freaking awesome.
I got one.
You got one too,
I got one, yeah.
For a short time, they were doing other things where you could be, I think, a rebel pilot or a stormtrooper, but you could only do it at the Disney park for a short period of time. And I just never made it to the park before they discontinued it. And I'm surprised that they didn't keep it going because they weren't that expensive. I think it was maybe $100 to get that done.
About $100. Definitely a very, very one of a kind, personal, unique item that you can't get anymore. Very, very, very cool.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
Tony, what do you have anything else to share? Something a little bit more current?
It's kind of funny. My items are actually inverted when it comes to the release date of them. That pop that I showed you was probably one of the earliest things that I got when I started my Star Wars collection officially. But this item I just got from a friend, and it's actually the very first version of Star Wars I ever saw. So it's pretty cool. And it's actually still sealed.
It's still sealed.
Yep. The VHS version of Star Wars that came out right before the special editions.
Yeah, digitally mastered.
Yep.
Do you have one that's open and one that's still? Obviously, you got that one that's still sealed. Do you have one that's open?
I do not, but that's a lot easier to find, I feel like. So
yeah, I've got I have like a trilogy box of that, and it's
And that's what I used to have it as.
Here's the $1 million question for you. Do you have a VHS player?
No, not currently.
I got a custom copy of Rogue One on VHS, and I didn't have a VHS player, and I finally got my mother-in-law's. So we need to have a Machtails night, Sean, where we need to watch Rogue One on VHS.
Oh, geez.
Right now, it resides in my cabinet.
It could be done. It can be done.
You should come down here and watch it on my CRT.
There you go. If you want to get the authentic viewing experience, make sure the tracking is off too.
You can't have it on a super big screen. You got to have it on you got to rewind the clock completely. Matthew, what do you have else that you wanted to share? I know you got 2 items here.
Okay, so I have another game item. So, since I was a kid, I'm really into like Japanese RPG games, and back in the late 80s and early 90s, and maybe even into the 2000s, like you could pretty much maybe people who had connections could get stuff from Japan, but only a few of the games got released here and got English translations because they had to make sure it would be profitable. So a lot of the games never were released here, and nowadays some of them are getting remakes and stuff like that. But one of my favorite series is the Fire Emblem series, and my favorite game in that series is the 4th one. It's called Genealogy of the Holy War, and so it was a Super Nintendo game which I never played as a kid. So first of all, you can go on eBay and like people in China like do these cartridges, and so it has like so it's never been officially released in English, but there's like fan translations of it that you can have patched onto like. So somebody like put it on a cartridge and it works. And then I went on Etsy, and there's people on Etsy who remake the old boxes. So this game was never made, for Super Nintendo. It was for the Famicom, the Super Famicom in Japan, and it had totally different box art and everything. So somebody like took the artwork and like made their own box with like all the different stuff. Like this is a totally new creation, and
that's awesome.
So yeah, and then it fits. Like I can put the cartridge that I got elsewhere in here with it, and so I have a legitimate copy. And I actually played this whole game, like because now like these games are notoriously hard to play. Like the Japanese only games were really hard, and that's part of why they never came to America because they're just too hard. And I actually played the whole game on that TV without freezing and stopping it and cheating and stuff like that, which most people will do nowadays to beat older games. I played the whole thing legitimately and beat the whole thing, which took me several months, and I was really proud of that.
Would you say your video game collection is bigger than your Star Wars collection?
I mean, no, not. I have a lot of comics, and I mean, I have like almost every comic up until like a couple years ago of Star Wars. So I don't think so. I mean, I have like several bookcases.
Like when it
You
comes
can't
to
see
peace,
them.
like you got
Yeah,
more.
and like novels, I could fill up 3 or 4 bookcases. So no, I think I have more Star Wars stuff, but also the games, are more expensive, and so it's sort of hard to compare the two.
Well, I got to give a shout out to Antonio from New Jersey. He was tuning in, so hello there. I got to get him back on the show. We're
Yeah.
gonna show some photos. See, that's the thing, man. You guys got to join. You guys don't have to join because you guys are producing the show, so you can't really get a higher tier than you guys have. But I got Andy producing. I got Antonio producing. These guys want to. I know Andy wants us to share some photos. We're going to get to that after Rich and I share our more modern item. But Rich, that vintage item was so cool. Like I said, I've never seen that before. Sean has. I haven't. That thing looks like it has been through the fire that was in Toy Story 3.
He pulled it out of the incinerator.
Here, Bill Maher had Quentin Tarantino on his show. And Tarantino had said they were talking trilogies. And he kind of broke, he kind of crossed the line a little bit because Tarantino said Toy Story. But obviously there's Toy Story 4. He goes, it should have stopped with Toy Story 3. He's like, that's why Kill Bill stopped. I killed Bill. But he was, when my wife keeps hearing about these grown men talk about how powerful that Toy Story 3 was, she's starting to realize that I'm still crazy, but there's other crazy people out there with me. It was cool to hear Tarantino say that he loved Toy Story, but specifically 3. That was a beautiful movie, especially when it comes to, like you said, Rich, nostalgia, our childhood, that sort of thing. Rich, what is your second item that you have? And I'm waiting for a 3D item, but I don't want to pressure you. I don't want to pressure you.
Yeah, this is actually something I just purchased over the weekend, but it's also a vintage thing. It's probably older than the Ewok. You guys remember these babies?
Yeah, Sean.
Oh hell yeah!
You probably still
I still have mine. I still have it. I still have it.
And this still works and everything. And yeah, I got it on Facebook Marketplace over the weekend, and yeah, I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's a cool piece. You know what? Jeff Frost, Sean.
Oh yeah.
He showed up at the Force Within Us premiere back at the Arcana several years ago. And he gives me, I can't remember if it was his or not. I think it might have been his. But it was that blue viewer with like 3 cartridges. And I was like, when people start bringing you gifts, it's like, that's really cool. I thought that was cool. And definitely something that I did not have when I was a kid. But, I don't want to take that away. I know, Matthew, we talked about Sean's, true vintage figures that he had from when he was a kid. There's something very, very special about that. And I still like to obtain old things, even shit that I never even had when I was a kid. Because it's even more mysterious. Like, wow.
I think what's cool about what you're saying, Chris, is so true. And I think what's kind of cool about it with Rich getting it, he didn't have it either. You didn't have it when you got it. I think when you come across something like that, that's that vintage and just sort of unique in that sense, it's almost like once you have it in your hand, it's almost like you stepped back in time. Yeah, because you could put that thing up your, you put that thing up to your face, you crank the wheel. There's no sound to it, but there it is. There's the movie. And you hear it in your head as you're going through it. What's fun about it is you can speed it up, you can slow it down, Yeah. But yeah, it's
one of my closest friends had this when I was a kid, and my mom would not get it for me.
Oh, okay. So you at least were introduced to it years ago when you were a kid.
Yeah. Like one of my closest friends had it, so this is like All right, take this, Mom. I got it all. I got it.
So it's a full circle moment for you in that sense there.
Yeah.
Well, I would think like for you having that in your hands is definitely more special than me having it, because I look at it as a cool artifact that I didn't have. It was a gift from a friend, where you are getting it, where you're like, wow, I remember playing with this and my friends, and my mom said, no way in hell are you getting that. So you have like a personal connection to that. And I think that's kind of why we buy a lot of this shit that we, remember from our childhood that we don't have anymore. But then again, we buy shit from, the past that we never had, and we think it's cool. And, maybe we don't even have a direct story to it, because, like the Star Wars toothbrush, that thing looked cool in the package when I saw it when we were shooting the real fans of the saga. But I was like, they made electronic toothbrushes in 1978. I had no idea. I was introduced to a whole new hygiene culture there. Well,
they weren't very good.
I want to know. I do buy autographs, as you guys know, but I do collect autographs, and I've gotten a lot in person. And people that buy autographs, even when they meet people, I've done a lot of that. But last weekend, was it, Sean? Last weekend when Mark Hamill was in town?
Yeah.
Right before the DNC. So he was at Fan Expo, and he wasn't charging. The people that flew him in and put him up, they probably said, you have $100,000 guarantee. We need to charge $400 for your autograph. Well, this one I got back in 2000, and it was a whole big ordeal. I actually bought this press photo, and it was unsigned for probably about 5 years. And I said, if I ever meet Mark Hamill, this is the photo that I want to have him sign. Well, make a long story short, and I've told this story before, we had met him in a theater, and the producer of his current movie that flopped, I said, hey, do you want to meet Mark Hamill? And I'm like, well, who the fuck doesn't want to meet Mark Hamill? So it was me, my cousin, Duffy, his sister, my sister, and his wife said, he's only going to sign one item for you, and he's only going to personalize it. And I was like, wow, I couldn't even ask for more than that. And I said, Mark, can you put some words of advice? And he said, work hard, and it will happen for you. And I've been doing that ever since. So hard to believe that that was a free moment. I was in I was in Wisconsin, mind you. Good things happen in Wisconsin all the time. Right, Rich?
That's awesome. That's a good story.
But I shared that on the first one, and a lot of memories started coming up when Mark was in town, and he was charging a lot for the people that were representing him. Were charging a lot. I don't want him to get all the heat for charging $400 to $500 for an autograph. Matthew, I do want to make a producer happy, because he just had a addition to the family, and he's been on the Wampa Cave several times. And he is producer Andy from Miami. He is a Hot Toys fanatic. And he goes beyond, because he customizes his Hot Toys. And for a minute, he had to pack it all up, because they had to get the room ready as the baby's room. I am assuming and guessing that these are back on display. I hope they are, because his collection, he spends a lot of time with it, spends a lot of research with it, and it's kind of, I would kind of describe it as putting together a puzzle, and he gets these pieces from different sources, if my memory serves me well. I personally stick to the jumbo 12-inch Hasbro figures that were $20 a pop. these are definitely on the next level. Do you guys have any Hot Toys? Sean, do you got any Hot Toys?
I have a few. I have a few Fets. I got a prototype Fet, Holiday Fet, a Django, and a Mandalorian. I have a few ones. I don't have a lot. I've got maybe half a dozen, but they are something else. They are next level as far as those figures. The sculpts are incredible on those things.
Yeah, and Andy was telling me that there is this whole community of people on forums and trading and swapping and telling people where to get this part. It's essentially modified Hot Toys. Is what I find it fascinating. I think we did two episodes of Inside the Wampa Cave on Patreon where he did a deep dive. And I want to say these photos are probably the more current ones. God, you know what? We talked a lot about a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't even cover, but I like to keep the show to an hour. And for
if I may.
Yes.
If I may, just be real quick before we go, because I have to give a personal shout out to a very important and good friend of mine who went out of his way for me recently in the last couple of weeks. Jeremy Roberts, you know him, Gator Fett, out of Georgia, one of the original members of the Mandalorian mashups. Him and his wife Robin. He knows I'm a big Sox fan, and he asked me months ago, which you like better, Sox or Blackhawks? I said, well, I'd have to go with Sox. All of a sudden, I get this package in the mail, and inside of it is this bad boy right here that he handcrafted for me, that he sent to me just out of the sheer kindness of his heart, just because he appreciates our friendship, as he said. I said, dude, I almost didn't want to accept it because of how impressive this thing's heavy. This is not 3D printed. This is solid mold plastic. I mean, look at this thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I will be proudly showing this. I will. What was that?
I said we were talking about, when Jeff Frost gave me the little reel as a gift. It's like that was a gift that he gave you. That's a beautiful piece, man.
Yeah. So I wanted to give Jeremy Roberts a big shout out and a thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. I will proudly be showing this off Friday at the Star Wars night at White Sox Field this Friday. Thanks, buddy.
Well, I gotta say one thing before we close it out. There is a community aspect of collecting, and we didn't get into this until Sean, you just showed a prime example. The thing about the community is that we help each other find the things. Sean, you're always constantly telling me all these things that you're finding. Hey, look at all the new stuff that's coming out for the holiday stuff. You know I collect that stuff. And then you picked up that Hawaiian shirt because I like the Aloha shirts. You got that at the Walmart. So I feel like collectors are always watching out for each other. This is why we hate dealers.
Yeah.
Dealers are not looking out for our best interest, But we as collectors, we have this bond, we have this community. We're always keeping each other in mind, what we are into as we develop these friendships, and saving them aside till when we either mail them out or when we see each other in person, or they make great bingo gifts at the Christmas party too.
No, this is mine.
Yeah. That is definitely not a bingo prize by any means. That's on a different level. So Andy says, unfortunately not, Chris. Most of these are from the room. Okay, so they're not on display right now, unfortunately. The Indiana Jones ones, yes, are on display. Great story, real quick. So he had a boy. The theme of the baby room was like a jungle themed. And he told his wife, he's like, well, Indiana Jones, he's kind of, in the jungle all the time. Next thing you know, he's going to start adding Endor themed action figures to the room as well, But anyways, I want to thank you guys for joining the show. sharing all your cool items and spending your time with me tonight. And we will be back doing another collector's show, talking about talking about the things that we did not get time to talk about. So, Matthew, thank you again, brother Rich Brendel. Always love hearing from you and cheering a beer. Cody Moore, we will see you with Matthew Rooney down in Nashville. Sean, I will see you sooner than later. And I am your host, Chris Mock, and we will catch you guys next time on another episode of Machtails from the Cantina. Thank you for your support on Patreon. Thank you to all the show producers. And if you got $5 a month, you can at least get access to Inside the Wampa Cave. Hey, chut chut. We'll see you guys next time. Be well, be safe. So long, everybody.